This is a Film Stories original podcast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, Tony Black, and welcome back to I Want to Believe Minute, where we unpick the second X-Files movie 1 minute at a time. Today, helping me to explore minute 94, running from approximately 93 minutes, as Mulder continues explaining Father Joe's psychic connection to Scully, to 93 minutes, 59 seconds, as Scully tells Mulder what Father Joe said, a fellow X-Cast hosts, Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair, and Kurt North. So yeah, this minute, the conversation's continuing, and one thing that drips over from the last minute into this in part is Mulder's frustrated about how he feels Father Joe's being unjust. You know, there's an injustice to how Father Joe's going to be seen after he helped this case, and how the FBI have intentionally, you know, in their reporting of this, omitted any kind of potential psychic connection. You know, and he cites about how, you know, he had the same lung cancer as Thomasin, the guy who's, you know, was having the head transplant and things like this, and times of death and stuff we've seen in the X-Files before. I mean, I immediately, and we've talked about it before, but I immediately thought of Oubliette, you know, in a similar kind of way, those kind of episodes. But he feels like speaks that juxtaposition at the heart of the film, doesn't it, of how, on the one hand, Father Joe helps and, you know, maybe he's seeking a level of redemption, but on the other, he's done these terrible things, and it's that balance point, isn't it? You know, is he right to feel that about Father Joe, do we think?
I definitely think that the aspect of the film involving Father Joe being a paedophile is actually really interesting because, you know, paedophilia is one of the strongest, I guess, taboos in our culture, isn't it? The kind of strength of feeling it provokes is obviously extremely high. And so it does mean, I think, is it Scully who says at one point, like, who's going to believe him or something, that there is a sense that people just won't be open to this. People just won't listen to him. Scully, of course, is wrestling with that herself, isn't she? And yeah, I think the aspect of the film where we're kind of wondering about whether God's message is coming through Father Joe, it's actually quite a provocative idea, isn't it, I think, and one of the more intriguing elements of the movie for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would come at it from a slightly different perspective in that Mulder's kind of, we've said it before, where we feel like he's old Mulder here, that he's kind of, you know, he's got his mojo back. And you think about, like, Whitney's death, that she was the one that brought him back in there, and, you know, the eventual closure is the same old FBI to a degree, and there's an element of the fact that the FBI, to be fair to them in this particular one, you can see why they would just go, look, the case is closed. Why do we need to delve into any further thing? Why do we need to listen to Mulder? This is all being decided. And it may be that Mulder's frustration for me is coming out a little bit because he's finally getting his mojo back and there's nowhere for it to be placed. And there's an element of that as well, on top of the aspect of a really serious issue in the paedophilia side of it, that it is something that people would potentially just close ranks on because there's no real need to actually delve into that any deeper because all the people on the chessboard have had to be taken off.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, I don't know, Mulder, like you said, Mulder's getting back to himself, and he kind of hits this dead end, and it's a little bit sad in a way. I don't know, it made me feel a little bit sad for him. Because he wants to get back to this, but he's just right back to nobody believing him. And, you know, there's that line, is it in this minute, where Scully says, like, who would take your call? Like, there's nobody there. And it feels like a very final sense of closure almost. It's like, okay, well, you know, you might believe, but who's going to believe you, you know? So, yeah.
We're talking about Mulder being back to his old self in a way, or having that sort of new drive again, or renewed drive. And there's an interesting moment in this minute, isn't there, where he pins the article back to the board. And I sort of took that as, I mean, his frustration is kind of palpable, but also you can take it as like, here's a sign that the fire has been lit underneath him again. And yeah, that's how I took the moment where he pins the article to the board anyway.
Well, this is what eventually gets him to start going squatching. He's been stuck in his house. Now he just goes squatching now. So,
Yeah.
You know, this is the whole reason.
Yeah, I love that as a theory. Yeah, I think the thing is though, what's interesting is that if there's ever going to be the kind of case where people wouldn't want to know about what the truth here, it does feel like something, as Carl's pointed out, something so taboo as a paedophile having messages from God, essentially, or, you know, it's the sort of thing, it's the most extreme, one of them, it may be the most extreme, one of the most extreme examples of a juxtaposition you could possibly have between good and evil, if you like, you know, in that basic sense. So if anything, it feels like something that you almost understand why Noah would want to believe, really. But at the same time, you're absolutely right, Sarah. I really like how you framed that then when you said, you know, he wants to believe, but no one wants to believe. You know, the opposite. It's really interesting the way that's the plot here, because it would have been so easy to have Father Joe be less problematic, and it would have been less challenging then, wouldn't it, as a thought process? And I mean, even as well for Scully, in that she says, I wanted to believe him, I did believe him, you know, and that's massive for her, not just from the perspective of being more open-minded now after 10 years with Mulder, which we know she is, but especially after seasons 8 and 9, but also with her faith, you know, with being able to reconcile both these ideas in her head, that she would believe and start to trust a man who's done something so awful because she believed in what was working through him. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, the way that all is discussed in this minute, you know, in these minutes.
And it's interesting because I believe on the commentary track, Carter says something about, you know, I think they record that commentary before the film is actually out there with the public. And when you think about this as a commercial movie, some of the subject matter is quite provocative, and I quite admire the willingness to go there from Carter in a way, because if what he'd really set his mind to was to make a movie that would pull some punters in, basically, and sell a few tickets, I'm not sure you would have this quite intriguing little exploration of faith and science, and, you know, the paedophile priest possibly having a message from God, and it's quite a strange mix of elements that a lot of people, I think, would shy away from, actually. And I quite liked, on one of your earlier minutes, Tony, the ones you were doing with Russ, I think Russ was talking about the casting of Billy Connolly, and he was sort of talking about how it kind of undercuts perceptions of this character, because the character, sort of the details of Father Joe are so horrific, and then you've got an actor playing him who doesn't, like, right off the bat, sort of encourage those audience responses. He's a more likeable actor, and I think it's just very interesting that Carter puts us in that kind of space in this film where there's probably a way to do this film with a Father Joe character who's more overtly villainous, and maybe that would have been a slicker package or something, but he kind of wasn't going for that here. Maybe, you know, for better and worse, he was kind of playing in different areas.
Isn't that like kind of what the X-Files is all about, though, is like we get the answers, and I put that in loose quote marks, so we know what happened with, you know, objectively with the Frankenstein stuff, and we have the evidence, and they were caught literally red-handed doing those things, and so they were brought to justice, but then we're still left with so many more questions. And that's one of the things that I feel like I really love about the X-Files, and I'm glad that we got this in the second film too, because, you know, we didn't know we were going to get more X-Files after this, and it made it feel like we were going back, you know, to the original good stuff that makes the X-Files essentially what it is. That, you know, we might have some answers, but we're left with so many more questions.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Absolutely, I think that's it. it's true. It is true to the X-Files and the kind of storytelling, and Millennium. You know, as we've talked about, how this film definitely has leanings towards that. It's true to the Carter-esque style of storytelling, I think. You know, in that way. And you know, we've talked before on this podcast about how it probably shouldn't have come out in the summer anyway. It should have been a more winter autumnal movie for it to have the effects, even despite the Dark Knight impact and all that kind of thing. It's not a summer film at all either. But yeah, it's the it doesn't matter when it was out. Ultimately, he was going for a story that was true to what he felt like the X-Files was really all about, you know, and that core idea, those core ideas at the heart of it. And yeah, that's to be admired, definitely. And I don't think it would happen now. I don't think they would let him do this anymore. Even someone at the height of their, you know, show running powers, or who created a massive bit of IP, I still don't think these corporations would let someone do a story about a paedophile priest.
I don't know.
Talks to God. Like, no.
I mean, I don't know.
No, we're not doing that.
The existence in season 10 of Babylon maybe goes against that in a certain way, because it's like, why on earth, you know, you got 6 episodes and you do one which is kind of a scribble type comedy about a suicide bomber. You know, it's like, I think he still retained that ability to throw a curveball, Carter. Like I said, for better and worse. It doesn't mean that sometimes you can admire the choices whilst thinking they don't always come off perfectly, you know.
Do you think that that's maybe potentially because sometimes he does speak in riddles and they may not have fully understood what he was going to do?
Potentially. Or he's just so secret. Maybe that's why he doesn't tell anybody what he's doing.
He just speaks in so abstract a matter.
Probably. That would make sense, wouldn't it? But anyway, on that note, let's draw this one to a close then, and we'll come back and continue discussing this scene and get into some more elements of it. So we'll be back very soon, guys, together to cover minute 95. But thanks for listening, and remember, until we do, trust no one.